I'm going to talk today about how to print labels for your holiday cards. How to print them from an address book or from other data in your computer. Now, I do this every year, and it is without a doubt the most difficult thing I do all year on my computer. On the other hand, it's not rocket science. It's difficult because every year I have to start over. And every year my wife tells me to write down what I do. Well, I did write it down last year, but I pulled it up a little while ago to prepare for this discussion, and I need to start over again. But I'm absolutely sure that it will be easier this year because I'll follow the instructions here in this mini seminar. So, what are we going to do today? Well, I'm going to show you how to find your data, how to organize your data. Then I'm going to show you how to open Word and start mail merge. And then we are simply going to follow the directions. But we are going to follow them with considerable care. I'm going to go through this process twice. The first time is going to be quite rapid, just to show you what the end result is and the number of steps that you need to get there. The second time is going to be a lot slower to show you the things that you have to do with care so that the process works. We start with a blank Word document. We go to Tools and click Mail Merge. We say that we're going to work on a labels document. We go to Next and pick a type of label. We then select the recipients. We browse through our computer to the place where we have put the data that is in fact already organized the way it needs to be. Here. We click OK. We find the list of all the people we want to send a holiday card to with the proper headings. We click OK. We then go to the first label and we put the field that we want, the fields that we want in that first label. We insert the name, close, and go down one line. We insert the second line, close, and go down one line. We insert the address, close, and go down to the last line. We insert the city, state, and zip code, and close, and we have the form with the fields for our label. We then update all labels, preview our labels, which actually puts names and addresses in that place, and then finally we go up here and say merge to a new document. Pick all the labels, or excuse me, pick all the records that we wish to merge, and we get all of our labels ready to print. All 124 of them, if that's what you have in your holiday list. That's the short version. Now let's go back and see what it really takes. By far the most time-consuming part of this process is finding the data and organizing the data so that Word Mail Merge can use it and get it right on your labels. So that's what I'm going to go through now. If your data is in a Windows address book or in a Windows database like Approach or Outlook, or in an Excel spreadsheet, you're fine. But there are probably a lot of people who have address data in a computer, and maybe it isn't in that format. I am a very good example of that. My data is in a DOS program called Time Design Name Bank. It's copyright 1985 and 1990, and Time Design Name Bank was bought out by somebody years and years ago. But that's where all my data is, for addresses, contacts. I have 3,932 records in this database, even though it's an old DOS address book program. I know I could get all the data out of here and put it in a modern database, and in fact I've done that a couple of times and used it. But I keep coming back to this old DOS program because I like it. So that's where my data is. To control this program, you use function keys. If you want to add a new record, you type F2. And if you want to search within the records that you already have, you type F7. And for example, here I can search all the people in my Christmas list one at a time because I have a category code which I've coded. It takes 3-letter codes, and I've coded it XMS. So I can search through here and for example, find someone or a couple of people on my Christmas list. And one of the things you notice is that different records have different numbers of lines. Here's someone with a standard 3-line name, address, and city, state, and zip code. Here's the next person on that Christmas list that has name and a second line, address, city, state, and zip code. This is the sort of thing that makes extracting information from such a database not difficult, but it requires care. So let's go back to how you would get the data on everyone in my database into a format that you can use to go to mail merge. So I go back to one of the original screens in this DOS program, and I see that F4 allows me to share data. That means I'm going to take some data out of this DOS program and put it in a format that I could import into a Windows program. So I'm going to type F4, and it's going to ask me what I want to do. Well, I look in the instruction book for this program, and I see that what I really want to do is to write a W file, which is the kind of file that can go into a Word program or a word processing program. So I type F4. Now this asks me where I'm going to put this data, and I am going to put it in a file called MB, standing for name bank, label 2. And then I'm going to type enter, which tells me that this file already exists, because I practiced this before I started recording. And I'm going to type F9, which is going to tell the program to overwrite this file. And now I am going to select the records that I want, which are going to be my records coded XMS. So I'll type F5. And I'll take this starting place out of the top, and you see that it will pick out all the records in my address book or in my program that have an XMS code. And I'll save that by typing F9. And then I will tell it what fields I want it to select, which I'll do by typing F6. And having wandered around here before, I know that that's the default set F3, which says I am going to just take out into this W file, and I'm going to write the name and address and the city, state, and zip code and the country code if there is one. So now I'm ready, and I can type F9 and save, and you see that it goes through and picks out 124 records. Now let's go and look at that NB label 2 file that I just created. It's in my flash drive, and within my flash drive it's in that name bank folder, and in the name bank folder it is NB label 2.txt. And when I double click that file, I get to look at it in Notepad, which displays all the basics that are in there without any formatting. Each record in the file is made up of the data that was in the file on the first line, separated by a comma, followed by the data that was on the second line. You remember that most of those names and addresses and city, state, and zips had nothing on the line between the name and the address. And then it has the address, and then another blank space, and then the city, state, and zip. Well, that's true for most of the files, but if you look at some of them, here's one, for example, where the name is on the first line, then there's one comma, and then there's U.S. Navy retired, and then another comma, and then the address, and then two commas because there was a blank line between the address and the city, state, and zip. So that sort of thing can distort your data when you go to put it into a usable format. Here's how I went about cleaning up this text file. I used a standard word processing program or word processing program capability of find and replace, and I put in double commas here in the find and replaced it with single commas and replaced them all. I also took out the first line that had someone in there on whom I had no address, so might as well pass on that, and generally cleaned it up. The result was this, name bank label 8, where there's a single comma after the name, there's a single comma after the address, and there is then the city, state, and zip code. And for the places where there were 4 lines, there's a single comma, the next line, a single comma, the next line, and the single comma, the next line. So let's see what happens when we open that in a spreadsheet. This kind of a file is called a comma delimited file. That means that each record is on one line, and the lines on each record, or the data in each record, the pieces of data in each record, are separated by commas. Let me show you what happens when you go to enter that kind of a file into a spreadsheet. Now I've opened a spreadsheet program, and in that spreadsheet program I'm going to open this text file. I click open, and I go to the place where that text file is, which is in my flash drive and in the name bank folder of my flash drive. And the type of file it is a text file. I'm going to open nblabel8.txt. When I click open, it's going to say, how do I parse this? Because it isn't a spreadsheet file that I'm opening, it's a comma delimited file. So I want to parse it as a CSV, which is a comma separated value file. And when I do, that's what I get. And when I widen out each of these columns, you see that for some of the people, there's a second line that is in the address line here. So when I did my double comma substitute single comma for double comma, I gave myself a problem. Well, there's a relatively easy way to take care of that problem. You simply move all of these one column to the right, and then and on down like that. So I get all my city, state, and zips in the fourth column. I have to go all the way down through this 124 files, and I'm not going to bother to do that right now because I've done it once already. And when I did, I ended up with this spreadsheet, which is what I call rectified. There. And that is the spreadsheet file that I can now use to open in Word Mail Merge. Notice that at the top of this rectified list, I have added a title for each column. I called the first one name, I called the second line, I called the third one address, and I called the fourth one city, state, zip. This is important when you go into Mail Merge because it helps Mail Merge set up your labels. So if we go to Word and we open a new document, a new blank document, and then we go to Tools and click Mail Merge, Mail Merge begins to walk us through the process of getting the data in that spreadsheet onto a bunch of labels. So first it asks us to select what kind of a document you're working on. And if you put a dot in the labels place, it then gives you what you're trying to do, to print address labels for a group mailing. And it tells you what to do, which is to click Next to continue. So you click Next, and it says, do you want to change the document label layout? Well, you have to, because the labels that you buy at the store don't look like a blank document like this. They're usually 3 by 10. A whole sheet of labels 3 by 10. So to find that, you look on the box of the labels that you have, the label forms that you've bought to print on, and you find the number. First, you find the type of the name of the brand of labels that you have bought, which in my case was Avery. So I clicked Avery Standard, but you notice there's all sorts of labels, label manufacturers available, and for each label manufacturer there are a whole bunch of numbers of labels, and mine was 5260. And when I click that OK, it changes the format of this document that I'm going to print on to look like the label forms that I actually have in the box that I bought. So now that I have the right label format up here, the right label option selected to choose a label size, then I have to select the recipient. So this is where I actually import the data. So where do I import the data from? Well, you browse, and it calls up a standard Windows select window, select data source. And my data source is on my flash drive. And in my flash drive, it's in the name bank folder. And the file is the XMS list rectified, 1006. So I select that, and I click Open. And Mail Merge is doing its thing, and now it says select a table and give it a name, which is okay. I could give this any other name if I wanted to. And notice this checkbox. It says first row of data contains column headers. That is checked because I put column headers up there: name, second line, address, and city, state, zip. And now I can click OK, and Mail Merge will pull up all the recipients from my spreadsheet. And if I widen out these columns so that I can see them all, and then take out the ones I don't want, like these first two that are blank, and go down through all of these to make sure that we don't have names in the address column or addresses in the city, state, and zip code column, or whatever we might have screwed up on our spreadsheet. And just assuming that you're totally happy with all of that, and I can take out printing this and save myself 2 labels. Then I can click OK. And Mail Merge says that next I need to arrange my labels. That's not a very descriptive term of what we're going to do. What we're going to do is tell Mail Merge which columns or which item in which column to put in the first label on which line. And I'll show you that now. You do it by going to More Items, where you see the headings that I put on the top of that spreadsheet: name, second line, address, and city, state, zip. So I want to insert the name first, and then I close it and type enter, which moves the cursor down one level. I go back and I want to insert second line next. Close it and move the cursor down one more level with the enter key. Insert the address. Close it. I have to close it just so that I can type enter. And finally, insert the city, state, and zip and close it. Now I have the orders to mail merge to go and get these items for the first record. I now need to update all labels so that the next record also gets the name and the second line and the address and the city, state, and zip from the next record down, the next row down in that spreadsheet. So when I click update all labels, that's what happens. I get the next record and the name, and etc., and etc., etc. Finally, if I want to see exactly what goes in this first page of these labels, I click Preview Your Labels. Mail merge goes to that spreadsheet and actually gets all the data. But this is only for the first page. When I did this the first time, I said to myself, what happened to all the stuff after Hansen? And how do I get all the rest of that stuff after Hansen? And I don't think the instructions are wonderful in this particular edition of Microsoft Word to tell you how to do that. But I finally figured it out by wandering around on the Mail Merge toolbar. This is the Mail Merge toolbar, and I tried most of these or looked at their descriptions, and eventually found one that said Merge to New Document. I clicked that. It says, do you want to merge all the records, which of course is what I want to do. And I clicked OK. And Mail Merge put together 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages and 1 more line for my 124 holiday labels to go on my Christmas cards. The end.